Hey, hello everybody, and welcome back to another podcast. How are you all doing today, everybody? It's a nice day. A little bit later than usual. I set my alarm for the wrong hour, so instead of waking up at 8:40, I was going to wake up at 9:40. But I am good. Not as tired because I got a little bit more sleep than I expected. But I'm awake, I'm here, I got my coffee, and I'm ready to talk Final Fantasy. So for any of you who missed last week's podcast, we discussed basically the overview of Final Fantasy as a whole for the series, kind of what to expect from all of them, different of the motifs and other stuff that you would expect from Final Fantasy, as well as talked about Final Fantasy 1 and Final Fantasy 2. Today, we're going to talk about the other Final Fantasies. Which is going to be real fun. So, let's get started then with Final Fantasy 3. Now, Final Fantasy 3 is probably the first... No, not the first Final Fantasy I ever played. But it was the first Final Fantasy I streamed on here of the Final Fantasy series. Obviously, the oldest one. It was released in 1990. But the version I played was a re-release. Probably... Yeah, it came to Steam in 2014. So that re-release is 2014. But it was a 1990 game. So Final Fantasy 3 is the third installment in the Final Fantasy series. It was released originally for the family computer, which was exclusive in Japan. And then it was remade in 3D by Matrix Software. It was released worldwide for the Nintendo DS in 2006, and then re-released later for the iOS, Android, PSP, Windows, and others. So, let's see. Hironobu Sakaguchi and Nobuo Uematsu, it was directed by Hironobu, and Uematsu composed the score. And Yoshitaka Amano provided the image design. So, the original Famicom version introduced the job system, which has then, kind of been a thing in all of them since. To a small degree. But the fact that different jobs for different... Either your character can change different jobs, like in 3, 5... 3, 5, 10 to 12, 13, where you can kind of change what you are job-wise, as well as there's other ideas of the job system, what with the, in other games, like 4... 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15. You have different characters who have different jobs instead. So you can mix and match your party to have the jobs you want, but it might not be like, Cloud's not going to be your healer, because Cloud is more of a strength character type of deal. Anyway. So this story revolves around the 4 warriors of light, named Lunith, Arc, Refia, and Ingis. They find the Wind Crystal, which grants them power and instructs them to restore balance to the world. So obviously, like I said, Final Fantasy 3 introduced the job system, and that means the 4 characters can equip one of 23 jobs, And each of these jobs are obtained either by finding the 4 crystals or by completing side quests. The jobs grant player characters abilities like magic and special commands associated with your specific jobs, such as the steal command is associated with thief, or the jump command is associated with the dragoon. Using a job for longer increases your character's base stats. So each of the jobs have base stats, and depending on your level, your base stats will change. So the different classes are Onion Knight, Freelancer, Warrior, Monk, Ranger, Knight, Thief, Dragoon, Viking, Dark Knight, Black Belt, Ninja. Those are all the physical jobs. And then these are all the magic jobs. White Mage, Black Mage, Red Mage, Scholar, Geomancer, Evoker, Bard, Devout, Magus, Summoner, and Sage. So depending on what you like, what you want to do, you're going to have a different playstyle things. Like, when I played through, I had a monk. No, I had a black belt, a knight, a geomancer, and a devout. That's what I had at the end. But you can really play around with it and have whatever you want. So, yeah. So Final Fantasy III is also the first game in the series to feature special battle commands other than magic, such as the steal or jump, and each is associated with a particular job. It is also the first game in the series that features summoned creatures, hence the summoner job. You could summoner up some enemies. Haha! In the original Famicom version, the player controls 4 generic Warriors of Light, 4 children without distinct identities who, upon finding the Wind Crystal, are granted its powers to save the world. Though their genders are never specified, it's assumed that children are male. Over the course of their journey, the Warriors of Light are joined by several support characters who do not fight, but offer help on the world map. The remake fleshes out the 4 protagonists with names and personalities, which are different than the ones featured in the official manga. They are given different backstories used in several places to accelerate the plot. Several supporting characters now join the party, but now randomly help in battle, either by attacking enemies according to their specialization or by healing. So obviously you have Lunith, who is the main character who discovers the Wind Crystal and is tasked with saving the world's crystals. Ak is Lunith's best friend from who joins him on his journey. Refia, who is a blacksmith's daughter from Kazus, and Ingus is a knight from Sasune. I'll give the backstory, which is a small portion. So here's in the prologue. Centuries ago, the ancients used the crystals of light to build an advanced civilization and triggered a cataclysmic flood of light. 4 warriors of darkness were selected to restore the balance, and the ancient civilization fell into ruin. The Golgans predicted that history would repeat, and that 4 warriors of light would be appointed to stop a flood of darkness. Ba ba ba. So yeah, that's kind of the thing. 4 warriors of light are here to stop a flood of darkness from destroying the world. Things happen. It's a fun thing, and yeah. I really like Final Fantasy III, even though it has a very what's the word I'm looking for? It's got a cute style. I like the style for it, so yeah. Anyway, let's move on to Final Fantasy IV. Final Fantasy IV came out in 1991. The version I've played, which is Steam, came out in 2014, which I think is based off of the Game Boy Advance. I think it's the Game Boy Advance port, which came out in 2005. So, Final Fantasy IV is the fourth main installment in the Final Fantasy series, developed and published by Squaresoft. It was released for the SNES in Japan, but was released as Final Fantasy II in North America. So, Japanese labeling and American labeling are different. Because FF1 and FF2 didn't come out in America, I believe. For the longest time. We only had 3 and 4. It has subsequently been re-released worldwide as Final Fantasy IV for the PlayStation, Game Boy Advance, and others, as well as a re-release on the PSP as part of a collection with its 2 sequels. So this game takes place in a medieval fantasy setting and focuses on Cecil Harvey, the captain of the Red Wings of Baron. After performing a raid on Mysidia to steal the water crystal, Cecil and the knights question the orders of their king, as they believe stealing from the Mysidians were wrong. As punishment for disloyalty, the king strips Cecil of his title and orders him and Cain Highwind to win back his trust by sending him to the Village of the Mist. This sets Cecil off on an adventure in which he and his many allies he meets must uncover the truth and save the world from monsters. So Final Fantasy IV was the very first Final Fantasy that introduced the iconic ATB battle system, or the active time battle system. So obviously that's the whole, you've got that bar filling, and then once that's full you can attack. In which characters' moves are represented by a gauge that slowly fills up, allowing them to perform an action when the gauge is full. The party consists of up to 5 characters, each with up to 3 unique abilities. Characters unlock new abilities and improve their stats as they level up. In the 3D versions, additional customization is available in the form of augments that allow characters to use different abilities. This has a sequel called The After Years. It was released 2008 in Japan and 2009 elsewhere. So that's fun. So, gameplay. Characters traverse an overworld to fulfill requirements of various quests, using talents to replenish strength, buy new equipment, and discover clues, all the while fighting monsters at random intervals. The ATB system was introduced, where players must issue commands to their characters in real time. The ATB system would return in the next 5 games, as well as making appearances in other games produced by Square, including Chrono Trigger, which is, hopefully going to be coming soon-ish. In battle, the player controls a party with up to 5 characters, making Final Fantasy V the first and only Final Fantasy in the main series where the maximum party capacity is greater than 4 party members. Each character has certain strengths and weaknesses, including either specializing or spellcasting powers or other special abilities based on their job. Characters gain abilities as they gain experience from battle. Magic is divided into 4 categories: white magic, black magic, summon magic, and a special type of offensive and support magic known as ninjutsu. Many enemies can counterattack when attacked under certain conditions. Examples include like the behemoth, the antlion, and the final boss. Dealing with these enemies require a variety of strategies, including avoiding using attacks that trigger the counter, causing disabling status effects to prevent counters, or using attacks that can kill the enemy in a single hit. This feature was not used as extensively in later Final Fantasy games. Yeah, I can see why you wouldn't use that very much in later games, because if you've got an enemy that counters you if you ever use magic on it, but it's only weak to magic, then you've got players spamming magic because they're like, well, it's the only thing that does a ton of damage, but he keeps killing me. It's kind of just an annoyance more than anything. Character shuffling in battle was a problem in Final Fantasy IV. The player could cycle through the entire party twice before going to select the party they wanted. This was not necessarily caused by the ATB gauge. Even with the character's gauge full, one might still need to cycle through the party twice before being able to use them. Spellcasters, which account for 8 of the 12 playable characters, gain magic spells at pre-programmed experience levels or fixed events in the story. Thus, the game's ability development system is considered the simplest in the series. This makes it similar to the way spellcasters gain spells in Dungeons & Dragons, as opposed to purchasing of spells in the original Final Fantasy. Yeah, so like in FF3, if you wanted to use magic, you had to buy the spell first, and then be able to cast it, just based upon your level. As opposed to being like, you're level 20. I guess since you're a black mage at level 20, you get Firaga. Type deal. And unlike the original Final Fantasy, almost no time is needed to level grind to advance to the next area, as long as the party does not escape from the majority of random encounters. Another new addition is save points, which became a staple feature. So, fun fact, I have Final Fantasy for the Game Boy Advance. I don't know where it is, but I have it. I did not know how to save in this game. And so I played for like 2 hours once, and then I was like, okay, I'm done, how do I save? And I could figure it out. So I didn't play it again. And then the save points they're talking about is within dungeons. There are points where you can save your progress, which is a really nice addition to have. Because if you're going through like a very long, tough dungeon and, the save point's either halfway through or right before the boss, and you're just like, oh man, I want to save and, be able to save scum my way through this boss. That way you don't have to trek through the entire cave again and again and again, which, trust me, has happened before. You can save scum. Alright, characters. Final Fantasy IV features 12 playable characters, with Cecil as the main protagonist and the only permanent party members. Characters join and leave the party as dictated by the story. So there's Cecil Harvey, a dark knight and captain of the Red Wings of Baron. Cecil begins to question his king's motive, which sets off a chain of events that leads him on the path to righteousness. There's Kay Highwind, the commander of the Baron Dragoons, and Cecil and Rosa's childhood friend. He has a rivalry with Cecil and unrequited feelings for Rosa. Rosa is Johanna Farrell, a white mage and archer from Baron, and her French feelings towards Cecil have grown beyond friendship. There's Rydia, a young summoner from the Village of the Mist. Cecil's need to protect her earns him a formidable ally on his quest. There's Tella, an elderly sage driven to exact revenge. There's Edward Chris von Muir, the Prince of Damasian, and a cowardly bard who wants to help Cecil in whatever way he can and is gradually inspired to become more courageous. There's Yang, I think his name is Young, but it's Yang Fang Leiden, the Grand Master of the Monks of Fabul. He aids Cecil on behalf of his kingdom. There's Palom, a young black mage in training from Mystidia. He and his twin sister Porum join Cecil on his journey after being sent to accompany him up Mount Ordeals. Porum is a young white mage in training. Sid Polendina, a master engineer who designed various airships for the Red Wings. Red Wings. He is a father figure to Cecil, Kane, and Rosa. His airship, the Enterprise, is used by the party to travel around the world. Edge, the Prince of Eblin, and a skilled ninja. He's quick to act on his emotions, but has a strong sense of justice. And Fusoya. So yeah. This one was a very interesting game. Because obviously it was also the first one that has a direct sequel called The After Years. We're not going to go into The After Years because, one, I really didn't like the game, and a lot of people don't like it. And I'll tell you why. So The After Years basically takes place, 15 years in the future from this. The main character is Cecil and Rose's son. And bada bing, bada boom, Final Fantasy IV happens all over again. Just with, like, one new character. Oh, and by the end, you have a gigantic party of, like, 20 different people who you can choose your favorite characters. It was basically like, but I wanted to beat this game with a party of this, and this. By the end, you only had 5 people who you could have in your party. Like, you never had more than 5 people in your party. Most of the time, you had less than 5 people. So, it was just kind of like, here's the story all over again, told in a different way. Oh, and you can use whoever you want. I'm just like, this is just... no. Just no, basically. So, I just didn't like it. So... Alright, moving on to Final Fantasy V, which is, like, the Final Fantasies I really enjoy are 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12. I do not like 4, I do not like 10, I do not like 13, and I don't know about 15. So, Final Fantasy V, 5th installment in the Final Fantasy series, excuse me, was released for the Super Famicom in 1992. Was re-released on the PlayStation in 1998 and the Game Boy Advance in 2006. And then on Steam, it came to Steam in 2015. Ugh. This was the only installment on the SNES that was not released outside of Japan. Final Fantasy VI was released in North America under the name Final Fantasy III, by the way. This was also the first Final Fantasy to use kanji in text, as well as hiragana and katakana. So, fun fact. So, this might sound familiar, but this game takes place in a medieval fantasy setting and centers on a group of 4 strangers brought together by circumstances to save the crystals that have mysteriously begun shattering. This is also the third and final game heavily featuring crystals and warriors of light, quotes, end quotes. The one behind the phenomenon is the antagonist Exdeath, as part of a plan to release himself from imprisonment and gain the power of the Void, a realm of nothingness which could bestow absolute power on one able to resist being absorbed by it. The 4 become the Warriors of Light and turn their attentions to defeating Exdeath and stopping the Void's energies from consuming the world. So the key feature of Final Fantasy V is the job system, which allows each of the 4 characters to switch one of 22 jobs and master the jobs to retain their abilities and stats when using a different job. The 4 can use the abilities of their current job and any mastered abilities they have equipped from other jobs. So essentially, if you are a thief, you will gain the ability to sprint on the overworld, which pretty damn good. So if you master thief and then you change your only thief to, say, a warrior, you no longer have the ability to sprint, but you can select 2 abilities from a mastered job. So then you can take that sprint ability from the mastered thief and mash it into your monk ability, and then all of a sudden your monk can now sprint. Ta-da! Battles are fought using active time battle system. Much of the strategy revolves around mixing up combinations of jobs or learning the right skills from a job to use in combination with skills from another job to defeat challenging dungeons and bosses. Like a good example is mastering the white mage and the black mage, and then being a white mage that can use black magic, or a black mage using white magic, or a time mage using both. Time mages are interesting. Final Fantasy V had a great influence on the series. The system has inspired later games including Final Fantasy Tactics, Final Fantasy XI, and Final Fantasy X-2. It also introduced many conventions to the series, such as the Blue Mage and the recurring mini-boss in the form of Gilgamesh, who himself has been featured in many games since. The anime, Final Fantasy Legend of the Crystals, is an OVA sequel to Final Fantasy V, taking place 200 years after the game's events. So, the general gameplay is menu-based combat and management system that allows the player to equip, heal, and change each character's selected jobs outside of battle, as well as to save the game's progress. Battles are mostly taken in a random, scripted, and boss encounters while roaming the world map and dungeons. Battle commands feature a basic physical attack with the equipped weapons, special commands such as magic enabled by this job system, and a set of items, though the player may also try to flee. The main gameplay features the revamped job system from 3, allowing all party members to potentially master up to 22 jobs. The player starts out as a freelancer, and as they travel to new crystal locations, the party acquires new jobs. A separate form of experience, the ABP, is introduced for the advancement of the character's job levels, while they continue to earn regular experience points. So as jobs level up, new skills become available for the characters to use in a new form of customization. The system introduces a streamlined method of multi-classing, allowing each character to learn job-specific abilities and carry 1 or 2 over when they change their class. The nature of these abilities varies. While some serve as input commands in battle, others may be innate to the class or activated automatically when conditions are met, such as the Thief's Caution skill, which prevents rear attacks from enemies. The party has 4 base stats: Strength, Agility, Stamina, and Magic, which are determined by both the character's base stats and their currently equipped jobs stat added together. For instance, Bartz, the main character, if Bartz is a knight, his strength will be base stat of 4 plus the knight's base stat of 47. Certain abilities also guarantee a magic increase. For instance, if a monk has the white magic equipped, white magic will increase their magic stat, improving their ability to heal. The larger the 2 values is used. When a job is mastered, its stat increase will be transferred to Freelancer and Mime, but none of its lower stats will, meaning the Freelancer's and Mime's stats will be the highest stat of any job mastered. Master all of them, and the Mime is incredibly broken. Which, if you ever watch the final fight of Final Fantasy V, oh boy, I beat their butt. I overprepared. I maxed out everything. The only thing I didn't max out was their level. The system is an improved version of the one of Final Fantasy III. Several older jobs were either reused or revamped for Final Fantasy V. The new jobs that were introduced have become stable classes in the series, such as the Blue Mage, the Time Mage, the Mystic Knight, the Berserker, the Samurai, the Dancer, the Chemist, and the Mime. Side quests come from interactions with the world itself, such as summon hunting, dungeon crawling, piano mastery, overcoming specific challenges, and discovering new locations. With the job system, it allows unique ways to learn abilities. Battle innovations include reworking the ATB system so that the player could, for the first time in the FF series, see whose turn would come next. Monsters for the first time are in a row system similar to the party. Final Fantasy V is also the first game in the series to have an equipment class called the Accessories, although they remain similar to armor pieces that were used in Final Fantasy IV. Since FF5, the accessory equipment type has become a staple as a type of equipment any party member can usually wear that provides passive abilities. So, main characters. There's Bots Kratzer, an adventurer who becomes embroiled in the adventure when he comes upon the crash site of a meteorite with Boko, his chocobo, and meets Lena. Lena Charlotte Tycoon meets Bots at the meteorite. She is the daughter of King Tycoon, and when the king failed to return from his trip, Lena sent out to look for him. Galuf Harm Baldesion, a mysterious old man with amnesia, discovered unconscious at the meteorite crash site. He only remembers 2 things, his name and that he is headed for the Wind Shrine. Farish Schwiz is a pirate captain, whom the party meets when they try to sneak aboard a pirate ship, and Karl Mayer Baldeson is Galuf's granddaughter who aids the party several times. Oh yeah. So the world consists of The world consists of many kingdoms and towns that flourish by the power of their respective crystals. When drakes and ships act as a means of commerce and communication, the three prominent kingdoms of the world are Tycoon, Waltz, and Karnak. Each protect a crystal of elements said to bless their lands. The fourth crystal is hidden away in an ancient civilization, where its whereabouts have been lost to history. So yeah, that's basically all the backstory without jumping into the actual, stuff. The game's adorable. And, I really enjoy it. It's got a lot of replayability, especially if you're just like, well, I want to do different characters this time. Well, not characters, but I want to do different jobs. Things like that. So there's a lot open to you for replayability just to change it up. As well as, I know there are speedrun marathons called 4-job fiasco or 5-job fiesta. 4 or 5 job fiesta. At which point, 4 or 5 jobs are randomly chosen, and those are the only jobs that they are allowed to use in the game. So, something fun. Moving on to Final Fantasy VI. This is the 6th installment in the FF series, released in 1994 for the SNES in Japan, and released as Final Fantasy III in North America in 94. Later, it was re-released worldwide as 6 for the PlayStation, Game Boy Advance, iOS, Android, and Microsoft platforms, and re-released, make even more changes, including modified graphics and additional content. Final Fantasy VI focuses on a conflict between the Gestalian Empire conquering the world and a rebel faction opposed to them known as the Returners, taking place in a fantasy steampunk-style world. The Empire has acquired great power by experimenting on captured espers, magical creatures of legend. The Returners seek magical power to fight the Empire on equal terms, and an amnesiac former Imperial soldier, Tara Branford, proves key to both sides for understanding magic and espers. This game gives players up to 14 playable characters, the largest cast in the series, and features the ATB pseudo-turn-based menu command system. The party can consist up to 4 characters, though some events require the player to assemble 3 different parties of up to 4 and switch between them. Each character has a unique command ability, such as Tara's Trance, Locke's Steel, Edgar's Tools, or Sabine's Blitz, and can also learn magic spells from earning AP from battles with Magicite equipped. Each character's rare Desperation attack will randomly activate after using the attack command when at critical health. So Desperation attacks are obviously rare. I don't even remember getting many, if any at all, when I was playing. So, yeah. So, gameplay. This gameplay is similar to that of Final Fantasy V, utilizing the ATB system. Players can equip espers that teach magic and give stat boosts, which is similar to the jobs for 5. What abilities cannot be taught by espers can usually be used by equipping relics, which yield abilities like jump or 2 hands. Player members can each equip a weapon, a shield, a helmet, and a piece of clothing. Each equipment piece often with its unique properties, such as stat boosts or elemental immunities. Parity swapping. Unlike previous entries such as Final Fantasy II and IV, though later made possible in the remakes, where party members come and go as the story dictates, 6 introduces the ability to change the party at almost any given time, fairly early into the game, and a feature that would be repeated in later installments. Players can form a party from whatever allies the Resistance has gathered. Each ally has a specific talent. For example, Locke is a thief, Cyan is a samurai, so on. However, the game diminishes the differences between the character classes, and thus all party members have almost the same durability if equipped correctly, or the right way. The player don't have to change their battle strategies markedly when the party changes. At times, such as the infiltration of the southern continent, the story demands that specific party members be taken along, but for the most part, the player can use whichever party they like. The game has a total of 14 playable characters, each representing a different aspect of the traditional FF job system and possessing a unique fighting style. Because of the vast number of characters, several dungeons require the player to form multiple parties using 2 or 3 groups to cooperate to progress. That is a very interesting aspect. Like, the final dungeon requires you to enter it with three parties of 4. And the weirdest part about it is, you have to fight a boss with each of those different parties. So it's not like you can put all of your eggs in one basket and hope the other 2 can make it through. Nope, they have a boss to fight too. Though some characters have special abilities similar to magic, the only characters to learn regular spells naturally are Celeste and Terra, although they have a limited spell pool. Most characters can learn magic by equipping Magicite, or a few select pieces of equipment. Magicite is the crystallized remains of an Esper, magical creatures with intense magical power. Each character can equip a single piece of Magicite at a time, and each Magicite shard can be used by a single character at any given time. Once equipped, Magicite teaches magic by way of accruing magic points. Each Esper teaches a spell according to a percentage rate, and accumulating magic points from battles and augments the equipped character's aptitude with that spell by that specific amount. Once enough magic points have been won, the spell is learned and can be cast. Some Espers, such as Lakshmi, teach several basic spells quickly, while others, like Valigarmanda, teach a handful of powerful spells slowly. System means that with patience, any character, bar the secret characters Umaru and Gogo, can learn any spell. In addition to teaching normal magic, the Espers give access to the summon magic. Player can summon their equipped Esper once per battle. At times, the summons are merely more powerful versions of the spell they teach, like Ramu. At other times, they are entirely different, such as Quetzal. Some Espers give permanent stat boosts when the characters level up, when the Magicite equipped to let characters modify their stats to suit whatever task the player wishes them to fulfill. Even physical fighters like Edgar can become powerful mages with enough leveling to increase their magic power. System gives summoned monsters a larger role in the party's strength than previous installments, something on which later entries like Final Fantasy VIII would expand on. A character's gear and level have a bigger impact than the permanent stat boost gained by equipping Magicite. Only one stat, when modified, makes an obviously meaningful contribution: magic power. Because the difference between character classes are purposefully diminished, magic is the one special command almost every character can use. On the other hand, small differences in vigor hardly have any effect, and boosting vigor with Magicite pales in comparison to simply equipping a better weapon. Stamina betters a character's chance to evade status attacks, but a ribbon could guarantee it. Investing meaningfully in a speed stat would require for that character to skew all other stats, and the effect could be achieved with a simple cast of haste. HP and MP investments don't make a character that much more durable overall, although having more of each stat is still useful. So basically what they're saying is just use magic. Basically. I don't want to go into who the main characters are because obviously surprises are fun. So let's go into the setting. 1,000 years ago, 3 gods, known as the Warring Triad, descended upon the world and warred for dominance. During the war of the Magi, the gods transformed humans and animals into creatures called Espers, giving them magical powers. The gods realized the war was destroying the world and petrified themselves, their final wish being that the Espers prevent their powers from being abused. The Espers took the gods' statues and fashioned a new dimension where they could live peacefully, away from humans, and to hide away the gods. In the present world, the world has experienced a technological revolution, while magic has faded into legend. To the south, the Gestalian Empire, led by Emperor Gestal, discovered the entrance to the Esper world and kidnapped several of the creatures. The Empire discovered a way to drain the Espers of magical energy and imbue humans and machines with this power. This technology is referred to as Magitech. Overpowering the armies of other nations, the Gestalian Empire conquered the southern continent and began to push to the north with the aim of world conquest. And this might be the first place where Biggs and Wedge show up, by the way. Alright, let's jump into the favorite of everybody, Final Fantasy VII. This is the 7th main installment in the Final Fantasy series, developed and published by Squaresoft. Came out in 1997 for the PlayStation, and was re-released and was later re-released for everything else. It's also on the PlayStation Classic Mini Console. It was the first title in the series to feature 3D graphics, pre-rendered backgrounds, and numerous full-motion videos, and the first to be released in Europe. Final Fantasy VII follows the story of mercenary Cloud Strife, who is hired by the eco-terrorist group Avalanche, led by Barrett Wallace, to help fight the mega-corporation Shinra Electric Power Company, who attempts to drain the planet's lifeblood as an energy source to further their profits. Apathetic to the cause, Cloud initially fights for personal gain and for the promise he made to the childhood friend Tifa Lockhart. Cloud eventually joins forces with many others to save the planet, which is threatened by Shinra and Cloud's nemesis Sephiroth. Discovers a reason to fight for a cause other than his own. The gameplay is a departure from previous entries in the series in many ways. Though it retains the ATB pseudo-turn-based menu command system, Final Fantasy VII features 3 party members rather than 4. The materia system allows the player to customize each party member's abilities to their liking, and the limit system grants them unique combat skills. Though minigames had been a recurring feature, FF7 introduces numerous new ones, many of them playable in the theme park Gold Saucer, varying from racing with chocobos to snowboarding. Final Fantasy VII is the best-selling game in the series with over 12 million units sold. It is widely renowned as one of the most influential RPGs to date. Its memorable soundtrack, characters, and story make it one of the most popular games in the series, prominent feature in popular culture, and a frequent candidate for lists of the greatest games of all time. The popularity of the title has spawned a remake, titled simply Final Fantasy VII Remake, and a series of prequels, sequels, and spin-offs titled Compilation of Final Fantasy VII. So, combat. FF7 uses the ATB system, in which the party member's action is input with a command in a menu once their ATB gauge fills. With up to 3 playable characters in a party, who can have various weapons, armors, accessories, and materia equipped. Party members stand in a row, though their position can be altered in the menu, facing rows of enemies, which come arranged in one of many attack formations. Facing them, surrounded by them, or surrounding them. So basically, it can be just like this. 2 lines with our party, their party. We can be surrounded, at which point we're in the middle and there's enemies on both sides of us. Or we can surround them, at which point our party is around them and they're in the middle. The character commands include attack, magic, a command provided by command materia, summon, or item command to use an item in their inventory with an additional ability to defend or change row. Abilities the character can use depend on their equipped materia, which can provide additional magic, summon, command abilities, or in other cases swap out commands for more powerful equivalents, such as W item replacing item, and allows them to use any combination of abilities. Materia can also provide enhancement when combined with other materia, or simply provide support abilities on their own. Once a limit gauge fills, the attack command is replaced with limit, and a character has access to one of their specific limit abilities, depending on their current level and unlocked level limit abilities. Unlike the battle abilities provided by materia, each limit is character specific with unique effects varying from dealing physical or magical damage to providing healing and buffs, which factor in different stats. Though most simply require choosing the ability and choosing its target, Tifa's limits and Kate Sith's second limit require the use of slots, and Vincent's limits, as well as one of Red 13's limits, transform themselves to become more powerful yet uncontrollable rather than choosing a target. The limit system is partially inherited from the desperation attacks from 6, but is based on a gauge rather than HP percent, and includes a greater variety of abilities beyond simply damaging. While the majority of previous titles featured 4 playable characters, 7 features 3, which became the standard in following games. Though many of the status effects are borrowed from previous titles like Barrier and M Barrier, or Protected Shell, have a limited use visualized by a gauge, which, like the main ATB gauge, can be sped up using haste or slowed down using slow. As the first 3D title in the series, the default camera setting moves it throughout the battle to focus on the command being used and their effects, unlike previous entries where the camera is fixed on a top-down position. Like, there is so much to talk about for 7. Growth. Through finding new materia, weapons, armor, and accessories, party members can be made more powerful and versatile. From defeating enemies, the player is rewarded experience distributed to members alive, and halved for members not in the party, which allows the party to level up. AP is also awarded, which levels up the materia equipped to the party members. Each character has their own set of starting stats, which grow when the character levels up. Though there are numerous other ways to boost stats, stat upgrading items boost a specific stat, and though difficult to come by, can be obtained ad infinitum through methods such as morphing enemies. Stats are further affected by materia equipped. Some magic and summon material will reduce HP and strength in favor of magic and MP as a penalty. Such materia, such as HP Plus, exist to boost a specific stats. Stats max out at 255 mean they cannot counteract reductions in new stats by materia, unlike HP and MP, which can reach 9999 or 999 respectively. The stat penalties incurred by equipping materia are negligible, and the stat differences between party members are often not relevant. The player can thus easily use any party member for almost any role, and thus can choose a preferred party based on their character and relevance to the story segment, if they so wish. Due to the materia system, the player can customize the party to their liking and give any role to any player character. The exception is Eris, who is presented as a dedicated mage by her stats and her default placement in the back row. So Eris is the only one who... Eris, or Aerith, is the only one who's legitimately weak strength, and trying to use her as a battle mage is dumb. Just use her as a mage. There are 5 kinds of materias: magic materia, summon materia, command materia, independent materia, and support materia. Magic and summon materia provide upgradable magical and often elemental abilities to the magic and summon skill sets respectively. Command provides unique command abilities such as steal. Support materia can be linked with other materia to produce various effects such as protection against or enhancement of attacks with elements and statuses found in magic and summon materia, or can boost the abilities in other ways, such as allowing spells to hit all targets, or can be used as a counter to an attack. Independent materia provide other boosts that can be simple stat increases or can change the way a character can be used, such as counterattack. Each materia is upgradable, though AP dropped by enemies, upgrading the abilities they provide or unlocking new ones. Once a materia is mastered, it is duplicated, and a new base materia is created, ready to be equipped and upgraded. So if you can max out, say, an HP up materia all the way, all of a sudden you've got a maxed out HP up, and you've got a new HP up materia that's at low levels. And bada bing, bada boom. Rinse and repeat until you have enough for everybody. There are 4 limit levels, which determine how much damage a character must sustain before the limit break gauge fills. There are usually 2 limits in each level, except the 4th, which provides a single limit, but requires a limit item acquired from a short side quest. Additionally, each character has an ultimate weapon that calculates damage in a unique way to that weapon based on different factors. Limits and equipment are the only things truly unique to party members, and the player may choose to style their equipped materia on these party members based on these factors. Though base stats are also unique to a character, they can be boosted easily, and their effect is ultimately negligible. Exactly. Ba-da-bing. The field. Outside of battle, characters use different blockier models. The player controls the party leader, normally Cloud, but Aerith, Tifa, Barrett, and Sid are party members briefly in the story, and can traverse and interact with the environment. This can involve interacting with NPCs to use their dialogue boxes, which can involve purchasing items and equipment from shops, or progressing the main story or side quests. Many areas feature treasure chests, and areas that are not safe zones feature random encounters with enemies. Newly introduced into the game, players can traverse the environment in ways beyond walking, involving climbing ladders or jumping across gaps. Locations are accessed through the World Map Hub. The World Map has few places without random encounters and less interaction with the environment. It can be traversed on foot or through one of the many means of transport, most notably chocobos and the game's airship, the High Wind. And of course, Final Fantasy VII features more mini-games than previously seen in the series, many of which are playable in the Gold Saucer theme park. Players can race chocobos to earn prizes or breed new chocobo varieties that can traverse otherwise inaccessible parts of the map. Other mini-games in the Gold Saucer include Shooting Coaster and others which also feature in story missions like snowboarding. Mini-games also happen outside of the saucer. Like in Junon, the player must perform CPR, participate in a parade, free Tifa from a gas chamber, and partake in a slap fight. At the Icicle Inn, the player must use a snowboard to reach the bottom of the mountain. Fort Condor has a minigame, real-time strategy game, where the player must position units to fend off an attack of monsters. And yes, there is a legitimate slap fight in the game. Alright, that's good enough overview of that. I think we have just enough time to hit 8, maybe. Maybe. Okay, Final Fantasy VIII. The 8th main installment in the series, released in 1999, re-released on Windows in 2000, and then ported to Steam in 2013. A remastered version was released last year. In 2019. This is set in a fantasy world with sci-fi elements and focuses on Squall Leonhardt, a young seed mercenary hired out to various missions by Balaam Garden. Squall and his friends are enlisted to help a group known as the Forest Owls, led by Renoa Hartilly, an endeavor that escalates into a conflict against the forces led by Sorceress Adea. The gameplay makes a departure from many series standards. While it uses the ATB system, it deviates from the series' traditional means of boosting a character's power via leveling, although levels are not completely abandoned as they were in Final Fantasy II. In addition, it does not have a magic point-based system for spellcasting. Instead, magic is collected, drawn, and created from items, and is used to power up characters via the junction system. So, gameplay. The gameplay differs from previous titles, the draw and junction systems being the most notable changes. Instead of leveling up to learn new spells and abilities via weapons or job class, the player must draw the spells from the enemies and draw points. Hotspots scattered throughout the game, containing random numbers of a specific spell, or create them from items. This eliminates the convention of magic points, but encourages players to hoard and conserve spells both for direct use and for junctioning them to different stats and associated guardian forces, who also hold the learning of new abilities. Enemies are random encounters on the field. There are 3 members to a party, and unlike previous entries, FF8 doesn't differentiate between front and back row, and any party member can attack any target. Pressing the trigger button as Squall while attacking an enemy has him deal an automatic critical hit. Honestly, did not know that, because it was never really specified very well. Guardian Forces. Summoned monsters known as Guardian Forces, often abbreviated to GFs, they require junctioning to characters to be used, as well as to use their inherent abilities. GFs take time to be summoned, and the time taken depends on the character GF combination. When selected, the ATB gauge begins to run backwards, and the character's name and HP are replaced by the GF's name and HP. Similar to the Aeons used in FF10, the GFs have HP and can take damage, shielding party members while being summoned. During the summon charge time, if the GF's HP drops to 0, they get knocked out and the summon is cancelled. They can't be summoned until revived. When the GF's ATB gauge reaches 0, the GF is summoned and attacks in a similar fashion to Final Fantasy VII. If the summoned GF has learned the boost ability, the player can boost the GF's attack power by up to 250%. But if the player fails, the attack power may actually be reduced rather than enhanced. Guardian Forces gain ability points from battle to learn abilities. Each GF has unique abilities, though rare items allow the player to customize each GF's skill set. Most abilities at least require junctioning the GF to a character, but some abilities also require junctioning to the character to take effect. Each GF has an ability that, once learned, can be junctioned as a battle command. The first three GFs are required at the beginning of the game. Other GFs are optional and can be acquired through side quests or by drawing them from a boss. Now, the biggest unique thing is the junctioning. The junction system is used for boosting character stats and to give elemental status effects to weapons and armor. The game has no equipable armor, but the player can customize the party members' resistance to damage via the junction system. The player must junction a GF to enable the use of battle commands other than attack. Boosting stats require characters to obtain magic by drawing spells from enemies and draw points, and by refining from items with GF abilities. The player can junction the spells to stats such as strength, vitality, evasion, and hit rate, which attributes can be customized depends on the junction GFs. The Guardian Force can learn to unlock more statistics to junctioning magic by earning AP in battle, and by the use of GF items. Yes, I know you're having a wonderful time there, Emotive. Experience and leveling. Experience points are awarded following defeat of randomly encountered enemies. Each playable character only requires 1,000 experience points to level up, whereas other games require progressively more. The statistic includes granted by a level up are minuscule, as major stat growth is relegated to the junction system. Enemies and bosses have no set level. Although bosses have level caps, they increase in hit points, statistics, and abilities alongside the player party. Higher level enemies are incapable of inflicting and withstanding significantly more damage and may have additional special attacks. They also possess better magic to draw and items to steal as their level rises. Due to most locations being visited several times during their story and for side quests, enemies encountered early will grow with the party. There are certain locations that are exempt to this style of creature leveling, notably the island closest to heaven and the island closest to hell, where all creatures are at level 100 regardless of character level, and the lunatic Pandora, where all creatures are at level 1 regardless of character level, with Squall as party leader. I mean, that makes sense, coming in super new to Final Fantasy and just hearing me talk about GFs all the time and being like, is he talking about girlfriends? No. So, limit breaks. The limit break system is a more advanced version of the desperation attack from Final Fantasy VI. Each character has a unique limit break based on their preferred fighting style that is randomly available when a character's HP is below a certain point. One notable difference between this system and the desperation attack feature in 6 is that the player can opt to attack normally even if a limit break is available. The chance of a limit break becoming available increase the lower the character's HP becomes, among other factors. In a system dubbed Crisis Level. While desperation attacks can only be used once per battle, there are no limits to how often limit breaks can be performed as long as the character remains in critical condition. Several characters' limit breaks are interactive, requiring the player's skill to reach its full damage potential. If performed correctly, these interactive limit breaks can be far more powerful than the non-interactive ones. Field gameplay. Final Fantasy VIII doesn't have treasure chests, the player being rewarded when finding magazines, draw points, triple triad cards, and sometimes items from talking to NPCs. Triggering scenes in towns is not always linear. Some optional scenes only happen if the player returns to a screen after already having visited it previously. Uniquely in the series until then, the distinction of dungeons and towns is somewhat blurred. While there are rather few traditional dungeons, town areas become infested with random encounters and with the objectives to fulfill until the current crisis is resolved, and afterward the area is usually returned to being a town. On the world map, draw points are invisible. New to the series, the world map has safe areas from monsters the player traverses on roads. Other world map transportation methods include renting cars, which expand fuel, running the trade, for which the player must buy a ticket, riding a chocobo, and even controlling a mobile garden that can cross oceans in an airship that, in a feature introduced in 8, has autopilot. FF8 introduced a minigame that can be played whenever there are NPCs around. A trading card game called Triple Triad that varies from a simple, easy-to-play game to a complicated one. More rules and variations of rules come into play depending on what area the player is playing in. Rules played within one area are carried to other areas, so that player will want to be careful what rules to pick while playing. Cards won from monsters or by playing NPCs can be turned into various items using Quetzalcoatl's card mod ability and ranging from grew to items capable of being refined into more powerful magics in the game. Cards can be obtained via a Quetzalcoatl card command to turn targeted monsters into them. There are side quests related to Triple Triad. Some side quests reward the player with new cards. Card Club is a secretive club for expert Triple Triad players. The player must impress to face the Card Master King. Queen of Cards is a traveling card enthusiast who can commission new cards being made for the game and affect the rules around the area she currently resides in. Other quests include Shumi Village in present-day Win Hill, puzzles in the Chocobo Forest, the mysterious UFO encounters, and the shadow of the Obi Lake. Chocobo World is a pocket station game compatible with FF8 in which the player controls Boko the Chikobo, who embarks on a quest to find Minimog, and assisted by Moomba and Cactuar. As pocket stations were never released outside of Japan, international PlayStation owners could not play this game. But its connection to the main game was still programmed into every localization of FF8, so it's possible to play the game by buying a pocket station from Japan. Chocobo World was ported and included in the PC versions of 8, where you can directly launch it from the game menu. So, yeah. 8 changed a lot. The first time I played it, I did not like it. But when I replayed it, I loved it. Like, 8 is very different, but it's so good, you know? Like, it's weird. It's different, but it's good. Yes, Chocobo World. We abused Chocobo World, by the way, when we played it. Because you can get so many good items. So we used it. But, yeah. I think that is a good place for us to leave off. Yes, 8 is where you showed up into the series. At the end. Yep. And just think, we're only just now on 15. Yes, looks like we're definitely going to have minimum one more Final Fantasy podcast because we still got more time, yo. We still got more to do. So, anyway, thank you everybody for dropping by and listening. I hope you all enjoyed. And yeah, until the next time, everybody, stay funky, people.